The dynamics of abuse. This Safe Center presentation will provide a review of the causes of domestic violence and the barriers to victims terminating these abusive relationships. Please note that this presentation uses the pronoun she for the victim and he for the abuser. Safe Center recognizes that this is not always the case. Domestic violence affects an estimated 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men in their lifetime. The dynamics of abuse are the same, regardless of gender. So let's start off right away by asking that question that so many people ask. Why does she stay? Victims of domestic violence stay for many reasons, just a handful of which are shown here. Many victims have been conditioned to believe that the abuse is their fault. Many are committed to the wedding vows they took and do not believe in divorce. Many believe abusers when he says he'll change or get help. Many have no support system to help them leave, and many do not have the financial ability to support themselves and their children if they do. Many are embarrassed and do not want everyone to know, especially in small towns and rural areas. Many want to protect their children because if they leave, they believe they will lose custody to the abuser or have to share custody with him. If they stay, they will be there to protect the children when he is with them. And finally, there is fear and danger. The few weeks following leaving are by far the most dangerous time for victims. All of those reasons are tied back to the power and control wheel. This wheel demonstrates the tactics used by abusers to gain and maintain control over their victim. None of these things are necessarily illegal. That is part of why these tactics are used, and in many cases, physical violence is only used when these tactics are not working or when victims try to take back some control. Let's start with intimidation. This is doing things like smashing objects, displaying weapons, and demonstrating cruelty to pets or children, even in subtle ways. Next is emotional abuse, which is things like put-downs, calling names, playing mind games, humiliations, and guilt trips. Isolation. An abuser may control what their victim does and who she talks to. It is common to use jealousy as a justification for this, which can be flattering in the beginning stages of a relationship. Using children. Making her feel guilty about the children, calling her a bad mom, threatening to take the children away, or even kill the children. This is an incredibly useful technique for moms. Minimizing, denying, and blaming. Abusers will say the abuse didn't happen or that the victim caused it. They may say, well, if you hadn't done this, then I wouldn't have had to abuse you. There's no personal responsibility there. Gender roles. This is strict adherence to traditional gender roles, such as males make the money and decisions, and women care for the home and children. Of course, living in those roles is fine if both people agree and are happy in their roles. This is often used as a justification for abuse, however. Financial abuse or economic abuse. An abuser may prevent his victim from working or take all of their money and give them an allowance. Statistics show that 98% of all abusive relationships include aspects of financial abuse. And finally, we have coercion and threats. An abuser may threaten to leave, commit suicide, or report the victim for something, like a crime or to CPS, in order to control the victim. He may also make her drop charges if he does get arrested and charged. Understanding these tactics that are going on beneath the surface can make it a lot easier to understand why a victim stays in the relationship or refuses to work with law enforcement or the courts to prosecute. Each wedge in this wheel creates barriers for a victim. Focusing on the abuser now, let's ask the new question. Why does he abuse her? We commonly hear these reasons for abuse: alcohol, drugs, finances, stress, anger, lack of self-control, mentally ill, or the argument just got out of hand. What do these reasons have in common? They provide an excuse and send the message that it was not the abuser's fault and that he is not responsible for his choices. Even under these circumstances, people do not do things that go against their moral code. Somewhere within that person, they think it is okay to abuse people, and all of these things just happen to make excellent excuses for that abuse. An abuser wants to have power and control over another person and thinks he has a right to have it. There is no denying that these listed items are sometimes factors in the domestic violence incident, but they do not cause the incident. Many people drink, many people experience stress and anger, all couples argue. Not all people abuse their partner. Abusers abuse because it works. They get whatever they want, whenever they want it, and they are oftentimes not held accountable. Why would they want to change? So let's focus on the problem. The only way to make a change is to focus on the actual problem. Why do we get frustrated with the person being manipulated, threatened, and taken advantage of? In cases of child abuse and elder abuse, we as a society have no doubt that the perpetrator of the abuse is fully responsible, and they are judged harshly by our communities. It is important to remember that vulnerability comes at all stages of life. Abuse is always the fault of the perpetrator, no matter what age the victim is. It can be tempting to put ourselves in the situation and make judgments based on what we would do, but that is not a fair comparison. Victims of domestic violence have been the targets of calculated behaviors at the hands of their abuser, most of which are not physically violent and not illegal. Walking away is not as easy as it appears from the outside. So what can we do? Focus on the abuser. If the victim leaves, the abuser will find a new victim. A victim leaving is not a solution to the actual problem. Look for the primary aggressor. Ask questions that relate back to the power and control wheel. Does he control who you talk to? Has he threatened you in the past? Evidence-based reporting. We know from our interactions with various prosecutors' offices that they want evidence-based reports. Try not to state opinions, and again, focus on the abuser. Avoid putting mutual combatant in a report. This is very rarely the case and makes it hard for prosecution to move forward. Looking for the primary aggressor is also helpful in these cases. Utilize and refer to batterers intervention programs. These focus on accountability. Anger management does nothing to address the issues of power and control. It can also allow victims to believe their abuser has gotten appropriate help and will change, causing them to go back. And finally, do not accept the excuses that the abusers offer, like alcohol, drugs, stress, or anger. If you accept them, so will the victim. We now know how to deal with the problem, but we still want to help that victim. So what can you do? Connect them with services. Service providers like Safe Center are able to address and assist in breaking down many of the barriers that the victim is experiencing, like lack of economic resources, isolation, society, low self-esteem, religious beliefs, love for their partner, belief that violence isn't their fault, they hope for change, the lack of legal consequences, children, and fear. We can erase those barriers. This one's important. Express empathy every single time. It can be very difficult when you've been to the same house over and over again, but remember what's going on under the surface. A victim leaves an average of 7 times before leaving for good. Be consistent, be patient, and be kind. Tell them you're concerned for them. Eventually they will hear you. Do not judge them for the position that they're in. Remember that there's a lot going on that's holding them in that relationship and in that home. Be patient. Remember that they do leave an average of 7 times. Sometimes you're not going to be that 7th person that interferes. You may only be the 2nd. But if you express empathy, tell them you're concerned, and be supportive, you will make a difference in their life. Creating a web of care is essential to solving any community issues, and that takes a lot of partners. When we all work together for the common goal, we can make a difference. Thank you for watching this presentation. Feel free to contact Safe Center if you have any questions or comments, or if you would like to schedule an in-person training. Thank you.